Hello everyone, great to see you online for one of our summer sessions. I'm Maxine Ficara, PraxisAuril CEO, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the second of 3 webinars that we're running today with our colleagues from Jisc. So a few housekeeping points before we start. We've got participant video and sound turned off to preserve bandwidth, so we'll be using the chat function to log any questions. Just send those in as you think of them. Please do remember though to note your full name and organisation when you ask a question, especially if your Zoom account is a personal one. If you are having difficulties with anything on the call, then you can also use the private chat function to contact the PraxisAuril meeting host. And just to remind you that we're recording this session and it will be made available after the event to PraxisAuril members. So we have an interesting session lined up next for you, all about embracing the full potential of open access. So let's get started. It's my pleasure now to introduce Caitlin Bloom. She's Senior Business Development Manager, Industry Research from Jisc. You'll also see Christian Evans, Customer Director, Public Sector and Industry Research on the call. And Caitlin's going to be chairing this next session with Liz Bow. So over to you, Caitlin.
Hello everybody, and I'm going to say good afternoon even though it's ever so slightly early by my computer. So good afternoon and welcome. Before I hand over to Liz, I just thought I would give you a very brief overview of Jisc. So if you've not heard of us before, we are in the negotiations between the publishers and the universities. So we provide a significant amount of the electronic materials that come to students, staff and researchers through publishers. So whether that's someone like Elsevier or through Open Athens or through Shibboleth, you've probably accessed some of our services, probably even this morning if you're an active researcher at this time. So we're supporting the development of policy and universities, colleges and open research to ensure that people can access the information that they want to do the work they want to do, and that we follow the open access principles. So I'm not going to dive into those because I'm sure Liz will mention them. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Liz to talk to you about open access.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. Right, I'll just share my screen. Okay. Right, so thank you everyone for joining this session. As Caitlin said, I'll be talking you through open access, but also beyond open access to open research. And really what I'd like to cover today is how far we've come in the journey to open access, what's still needed to achieve that transition, the key challenges and opportunities with embedding open research into the landscape, and looking to the future, especially in light of COVID-19 and the challenges, the enormous challenges that's presented to the research community. So just to start with, our vision at Jisc, given our long history as well with open access over the past 20 years really supporting the transition, is now for research to be as open as possible, as early as possible, so it can provide the maximum possible benefit to all. And at Jisc, as Caitlin mentioned, we have a long history of negotiating agreements, so transformative agreements, which are now coming to the fore in helping move and achieve that transition to open access. We also deliver services around policy, advocacy, advice and guidance, and are currently also developing more services around research data management, all to help ease the transition in the UK for our funders and members to open access and beyond to open research. So I'm going to talk you through really open research and what it means to us at Jisc and the different definitions, as open research in itself has become more of a concept with emerging themes over time, and talk you through why open research and what benefits it brings. So firstly, when talking about open research, it's worth pointing out that this encompasses open access. Open access is very clearly defined as immediate, free access to published outputs. But beyond this, what open research means is really opening up all research outputs throughout the research lifecycle. And this is where it gets trickier in terms of definitions. In fact, if you Googled open research, I don't think you'd find a clear definition, but there are certainly emerging themes and practices that have emerged over the years around open research, from open commenting and peer review to open data, which is critical for open research, pre-registration, preprint, so that's the early sharing of research design and research outputs prior to peer review, open resources, open source, and the list goes on. And I've captured some of them on this slide, but really actually open research is more of a collection of practices that are emerging and evolving over time. So as I mentioned, our vision at Jisc is really for research to be open as early as possible, and it's worth thinking about this throughout the research life cycle. So from research design and planning to data collection, collaboration, analysis, so the active research data management side, to the more archival data management, so managing storage and preservation of data, sharing and publishing your work, disseminating it among your peers, and the usage and discovery of research. So all of these different stages, we're seeing a lot of innovation and disruption to normal practices, and it's an exciting time, and really looking at, throughout the whole research life cycle, how we can transform research and scholarly communication. So what are the benefits? As I'm sure many of you are aware, open research really is now widely regarded as the best optimal research practice. So in sharing your work early and making it freely available, you're really maximizing the visibility and usage. And there are many studies that have shown a citation advantage to open access, but also in sharing data, making it more accessed and cited and built upon by your peers. So in that respect, it's arguably accelerating the pace of scientific inquiry and discovery, making it easier for other researchers to build upon researchers' work and accelerate that pace, and more opportunity for collaboration, not just among your network, but really globally. So really opening up opportunities for work to be reused in new and innovative ways. And it's also about improving reproducibility. So for example, in sharing methodology and the details, precisely the protocols around research, that work is being improved upon in terms of rigor and quality, and ultimately more reproducible. Greater accessibility and transparency of the research process is also a key benefit. And with that also means greater public engagement. And we've seen with open research, the open research movement, more citizen science projects. And especially with COVID, what that's shown is really public engagement is critical with research, and open research really opens up that process. So now I'm going to talk you through how far we've come with open access and looking at the key drivers in achieving that transition, and looking beyond that towards more open research. So looking at the open access movement, it actually started very early, probably prior to the 2000s actually, but really in that time, the early 2000s is when we saw the publishing models emerge for open access at BMC, PLOS, and more traction with the Berlin Declaration, and open access really establishing itself as a standard publishing model. But as many would argue, open access perhaps hasn't happened as quickly as we would have liked. So actually look at the number of OA articles last year, looking at data using on paywall, 31% of all journal articles in 2019 were OA. This has increased substantially since then, with green OA and content being released under embargo. But many would argue that this hasn't gone far enough, and I would say we've reached an exciting point in the movement with open access, with an increasing number of funders mandating OA and increasing interest worldwide. And with that in mind, you can't talk about open access without talking about Plan S. And so Plan S was announced in September 2018, endorsed by Wellcome Trust and UKRI, among other international funders. And that's really represents an exciting step towards completing the transition to open access in mandating that all work funded by those funders is made freely and openly available at the point of publication via different compliance routes. And that's really been a game changer. And you may have seen earlier this month, Coalition S, the group behind Plan S, announced a rights retention strategy, essentially providing clarity around the route to compliance with open access, where authors deposit their work in a repository, making sure that it's the rights are retained by the authors. So they retain copyright, all the work is under CC BY license, regardless of which route the author takes to publish their work. So that really is an interesting move, and we'll see how publishers react to that in shifting essentially the onus on in issuing copyright licensing, really taking the ownership more towards the institutions and the authors upstream, so prior to publication. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. We also are working at Jisc with UKRI and have provided our feedback to their consultation, as they are currently undergoing an open access policy review. And more recently, we were really pleased to see the government R&D roadmap, where open research was really strongly emphasised, and there's an incredible amount of support for open research practices within that roadmap, outlining measures that they would like to be taken, including greater recognition of open research practices and of different research outputs as one example, along with research assessment as well. So a lot of support for open research and how that will really help shift the research in the UK and establish the UK as a world leader in research. So I won't go into this into detail, but just to summarise our response at Jisc to the UKRI OA policy consultation. In summary, we strongly believe that institutional repositories will play a key role in providing and ensuring compliance with open access. And with that in mind, we've recommended that UKRI consider mandating that material is always archived in institutional repositories, regardless of which route the author has taken for policy compliance. So even if they publish an open access publication. We also have a registry of open access repositories, so we recommend that registration of repositories is mandatory, as with that brings many benefits, bringing them up to standards, but also recognising repositories that do meet the mandatory criteria. And also linking up with our aggregator core, which is the world's largest aggregator of open access content, so increasing usage and discovery of the content in those repositories, and really strengthening and adding resilience to the repository landscape. And with that in mind, preservation is really important, so it's not just about putting the content in the repository, but also ensuring long-term preservation. We also recommended that we lended our support to persistent identifiers. We strongly believe that that's strategically an important area to support to really achieve the transition to open access and beyond. So with that in mind, calling upon publishers, requiring them to make sure that they do automate sending of persistent identifiers and ORCID for corresponding authors in a timely manner. So really ensuring all key stakeholders are invested in ensuring that we have the infrastructure for open access. And last but by no means least, transformative agreements, we believe, are currently the best mechanism for transition to open access. With that in mind, we would welcome more support in furthering transparency of publisher data, especially, and really unlocking that data, giving more transparency to pricing, and also funding other publishing models that in an effort to innovate and break with legacy. So what are the key drivers in the transition to not only achieving the transition to open access, but also open research? Well, funder policies and investment is clearly hugely important. And as I've mentioned, I think Plan S and UKRI policy review, those will be game changers in this, achieving the transition to open access, so we can really appreciate and realise the benefits of open research. Transitional agreements, we believe, will be a clear driver in this transition, and Jisc is negotiating on behalf of the sector in the UK with those agreements. A cultural shift is incredibly important, and really open research, it's being driven by the needs of the academic community, but we need to at Jisc, we're focused on really helping support that shift culturally, raising awareness, advocating the benefits of open research, as really without that cultural shift, none of this will really be made possible, and we won't really truly realise the benefits of this. And technology is clearly important, so that infrastructure, training. So in addition to that cultural shift, really providing the research community, research managers, researchers with the tools and expertise to be able to deliver on what they need. And new publishing models, so institutional platforms, funder platforms, diamond open access, really breaking with legacy models, as I said, I think will be a key driver in this transition. So what are the challenges and opportunities with this journey to open research? Well, I've summarized these into 4 key challenges, and we'll talk you through the opportunities that I see in addressing those challenges, and at Jisc where we're looking to provide support, and where our existing services and other services already working to address these challenges. So the first challenge is really navigating the complex and changing policy landscape. So it's great that we're seeing now this increased traction in funders mandating open access, and certainly the UK is a leader in open access. But one key challenge is really trying to harmonise the policies among funders and institutions. And when looking at open research, we really should take a global outlook. So this will require increased coordination and engagement at a global level with all key stakeholders, funders, publishers, institutions, and so on in the industry. It's really a collaborative effort. And inevitably, this ambiguity and diversification of policies isn't going to go away. So we do need tools and services to help disambiguate policies and at the point of need. And at Jisc, we've long provided services to help with this, namely our Sherpa services. And I've included a screenshot of Sherpa Romeo there. You can see that, so Journal Age and Aging as an example, we present researchers with different modes of compliance, open access. We also have Sherpa FAT, which will show you compliance within a journal with respect to your funder policy, to see if that actually meets your meets those requirements. And we also have Open Door, which I mentioned, which looks at compliance of repositories to criteria, which will be which we are continually developing in line with the changing policy landscape, and in response to community feedback of what you really need to achieve compliance and what will really ease the transition for you. And the next challenge, which really is a huge one that should never be underestimated, is really the tools, standards, and infrastructure required for open access and open research. Essentially the plumbing to make it all work. And persistent identifiers are really a key area that are just we're interested in, and in helping the UK really realise the benefits of persistent identifiers. ORCID being one of them. We have a UK ORCID consortium where we help provide ORCID support to all our institutions in the UK, and really help embed ORCID within the institutions. But then there are also other persistent identifiers, such as research activity identifier and so on, where we're looking at the potential for those and how they should be embedded in the research community and what resources are required for that. And actually at the end of my slides, I've got a link to a survey which I would encourage you all to take a look at and let us know your views on persistent identifiers and what you think is needed. There are also intermediation or intermediaries that are now emerging on the market that are really in response to the challenge of the many-to-many problem with publishers, funders, institutions, and linking everything up. So at Jisc, we have Publications Router as one example, which helps feed content from repositories, from publishers to repositories and automate that process. And now, as actually as part of our transformative agreements, we require publishers to work with us on that to automate that. There's the OA switchboard, which was born from ASPA, which is an exciting initiative that really aims to capture APC payments and data around that to increase transparency and again address that many-to-many problem. Research repositories, as I said, we believe are crucial for open access and open research. Jisc has its own open research repository, which allows deposition of data and research articles and other outputs. This has a fair checker embedded on it, so there's also the importance of tools around open research in linking with these systems, and we're certainly seeing on the market a range of new tools and services around research data management. There's also the issue of interoperability. Frequently we hear from institutions that that's a growing issue with different systems and processes, and at Jisc we're working on developing a service to help with interoperability, not just between repositories and preservation systems, but also around other systems, and really helping link and connect those in a way that is functional and delivers what we need for open access and open research. And as I mentioned before, content aggregator tools such as Core can be helpful in really embracing the potential of open access, surfacing that content, and aiding discovery and really helping realise the benefits of open research. So thirdly, a key challenge is time and cost associated with this transition, and that cannot be underestimated. Clearly now there's tremendous financial pressure that the whole sector is undergoing, and while the importance of open access and open research is clearly accepted, this needs to be achieved in a timely and cost-effective manner. And with that, we require greater analytics and intelligence. At Jisc, we have Iris, which helps monitor usage of content repositories. We have Monitor, providing APC reporting, a free service for institutions, being able to monitor your open access costs. Transitional agreements, there's now a push for more pricing transparency, driven by Coalition S, and requirements being imposed on publishers to conform with our pricing transparency frameworks that have emerged. And these frameworks and this push towards more transparency will likely drive more openness, hopefully, with publishing and that relationship with publishers, institutions and funders, and help us embrace more innovation and publishing models, and really assess the true value of what publishers are bringing, but also the value of open access and open research. At Jisc, we're also really committed to help the research community make intelligent decisions and the right purchasing decisions around different tools and systems available. So, for example, we have a research repository dynamic purchasing system, which basically means that we provide institutions with a range of pre-qualified suppliers for repositories that they know they can be confident meets that requirements, minimum requirements, and we can work with them to ensure that they do meet their bespoke requirements in addition to those, and get value for money. And last but not least, with all of this, considering time and money, there's that balance as well with open and commercial and not-for-profit, and really a drive towards more shared community-owned services as part of the open research movement. And that will be interesting to see how that develops going forward. And certainly at Jisc, we're with these pricing frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems, that's a key focus for us, ensuring that institutions are provided with cost-effective solutions. So that's challenge 3. And then the last challenge is really moving beyond this and helping embed open research practice in the research landscape. So transforming and changing research practices so we can actually embrace the full potential of what open research means. So one key aspect to this is research assessment. And what we're looking at Jisc especially is really what can we do to help transform research assessment with research analytics, more powerful analytics to really evaluate research outputs and transform how we recognize quality in research with the emergence of new research indicators, so not just citations, looking at other measures of quality and openness. And we'll be looking at that with the community and hopefully developing new research indicators that are adopted by the community and embraced to really change the reward system and incentives in research. A key part of embedding the practices is also providing advice, guidance and training, making sure everyone feels well equipped to handle, for example, research data, formulate research data management plans. And as I said before, this is essentially, it has to be a collaborative effort, and actually there's a key to the open research movement is collaboration across disciplines, industry, nations. You know, I couldn't really give you a clear definitive definition of open research because there isn't one, because it means different things to different disciplines. So really looking at that level and making it a peer-led change. So this is really the beginning of the journey and looking at how we can innovate and really look at the emergence of new open research practice as we've hopefully can put that transition of, you know, to open access behind us and move to opening up all research outputs. Meta research is also a strong area of interest to us, and we're working with partners such as UK Reproducibility Network. So the study of research, really assessing new open research practices, looking at them, evaluating them critically, reviewing them and building upon that, and perhaps challenging views around and how research should be conducted with evidence. Institutions clearly play a clear, you know, pivotal role in all of this. And one thing that we're seeing a rise in is more statements and policies around open research at institutions, which is great to see. So just we're keen to help institutions really translate those policies and statements into practice where we can and in response to their needs. So I'll be keen in the discussion if you have any comments around this and how we can work with you in that regard. So looking to the future, I can't give this presentation without mentioning the impact of COVID. Clearly, it's actually brought open research to the fore and made it more important than ever, but it hasn't been without its challenges. And just looking at the impact of COVID-19 on research as a whole, there's been clearly an urgency of effective science to inform evidence-based decision-making. Policymakers, funders have had increasing public pressure to make research disseminated more quickly and openly. Research bodies and institutions have had to fundamentally change their operations with increasing financial pressures, and funding sources are undergoing fundamental change. And what has this meant for open research? Well, arguably, COVID-19 has accelerated the open research movement, perhaps not even just beyond COVID-19 research, because what we've seen is really, you know, open research embodies the best research practice, and with that clear need to disseminate research as quickly and openly as possible, publishers were called upon to make their content open, underlying data open. We also saw a letter of intent from various publishers for rapid peer review. Preprints have really, the number of preprints grew astronomically in bioRxiv and medRxiv, with COVID-19 research being disseminated early prior to peer review. That wasn't without its challenges. So there were clearly lessons learned that have actually, this is accelerated, in terms of open research practices, where bioRxiv, for example, had to make their initial checks of preprints more stringent. We've seen Outbreak Science launched with pre-review, where essentially they were encouraging and facilitating community-driven peer review of preprints, and COVID-19 data portal, and there are many more. With COVID-19, it hasn't been without its challenges, and what we, in terms of open research, and one argument or one view on this could be that actually this is how all research should be conducted, but it's worth, I think we'll see the lessons learned and emerging from this, and the different initiatives, and how this will impact going forward. So finally, I want to put questions to the group, because I think really at Jisc, anyway, we're here to support the research community, and with COVID-19 especially, again, the lessons learned from this and what impact generally this is having on research, and how this will impact the research landscape will be incredibly important when thinking about our transition to open access and open research. So I want to put this question to the group, really. I've talked through the challenges and opportunities in the transition to open research, but if you were to build a new scholarly communication system, what would it look like? And what are the key challenges you face in the journey to open research? And lastly, how can we at Jisc help you in achieving those challenges? So finally, just to give you a few links here, which are hyperlinked to my slides, which I believe will be circulated after this. An overview of open research services at Jisc, our toolkit for research data management, which provides some advice and guidance around various areas of research data management. And as I've mentioned, our persistent identifier survey, where we're really keen to hear your views, and the deadline for this is 7th of August. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I was able to provide you with an overview of how far we've come with open access and the key challenges that we're seeing right now. And I'd welcome any questions or feedback and your viewpoints on what you see as the key challenges, and how Jisc can help you with these. So thank you very much, and over to you, Caitlin.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I always learn something when talking about open access and open research, and I certainly did today. I would invite people to start popping questions into the chat pane. I'm going to totally be in the chair's position and ask mine first. Do you think that the cultural shift we have seen through COVID in terms of open access, open research, because of the need to be virtual, will continue? Do you think it will kind of continue with a tilt towards something else? Kind of how do you predict that cultural shift happening?
That's a really good question. I think it's probably too early to say, because I think generally what we've seen is clear evidence for earlier sharing and collaboration at a global scale. But in terms of the practical impact of COVID-19 on research and researchers and research managers and the whole, all parties involved in the research process, I think that's still yet to be determined. But definitely with that, obviously, there has been increased reliance on online tools and virtual collaboration. So hopefully this will lead to faster adoption of open research practices. But I think again, with the increasing financial pressures, it's about and the burden that the community is facing, it's about really supporting the community through that transition and the immediate realities of the financial pressures.
Great, thank you. So we've got a question in the chat. It says, interested to hear how you see the role of institutional repositories compared with national shared services in the future, thinking about issues around discoverability and a clear, robust version control system.
So that's a great question. So at Jisc, we're certainly supportive of the idea of a national shared repository, but depending on the goals, and I think so the question here, I guess it depends on what angle you take it from. So in terms of version control and clear standards, there could be an argument there for a national repository and helping setting those standards, and also providing a clear framework. But then in terms of discovery, I think that's where there are already tools there in place. So for example, I mentioned Core. There is on Paywall as well, and there's an increasing movement to aggregate OA open access content and make it more discoverable. There are obviously other well-established discovery services out there already, not just focused on OA. So it's an area of interest across key players in the market, and is a key challenge really, I think, for researchers, and it is really helping us achieve the end goal of embracing and realizing the potential of open research. So not just being compliant with those policies, but making it discoverable. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, I think I see potential for the role of maybe more national shared services, but I think there's a balance there, and it's depending on the angles you take, from standards to discovery, and also not taking away what institutional repositories currently have and that vibrant network of repositories that we already have in the UK.
Great, thank you very much. The person who asked for it is a big question, and it certainly is a big question, and it's got a lot of avenues that could be explored. Maxine, have you had anything come through that I've missed? Maxine's keeping an eye on the chat for me.
Caitlin, I haven't got anything coming through separately. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to a few other things that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do think of any questions, please do pop them in the chat. We've had one just pop up, if that's okay, Maxine?
Yeah, carry on, carry on.
So how does Jisc view open research working alongside patenting, licensing and intellectual property? Another very big question.
That is a big question. So I think we're very much guided by funder policies here, and we aren't the policy makers, but we do we try to provide thought leadership around these areas. So I would say we don't have a clear stance on this yet, is the honest answer.
Absolutely fine. We've had a request to make the slides available. Just as a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we will check if we can add the slides as a separate file alongside that. Any questions from current attendees? If not, I will hand it to Maxine, because I'm sure she has some too.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you both. Thank you very much. That was a really interesting session that's given us a good grounding in the area of open research and the challenges ahead, as well as possible solutions for those. So thank you so much, Liz. Really appreciate you giving up your time to talk to us today. And as Caitlin said, I mean, you can continue to communicate with us via all the usual channels, including our online discussion forum. And of course, you can contact Liz, Caitlin or Christian directly too. We'll get the recordings published as soon as we can. Brilliant. Okay, thank you again, Liz. And to all of you who've joined us online today, I will just give you notice too of a third and final session that we're running this afternoon with Jisc at 2 o'clock with Guy Sardon, who's talking about cyber attacks in our area. So it sounds like something that we should all know something about. So hopefully I'll see some more of you online again later today. Thanks very much again, Liz. Much appreciate your time. Excellent session. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.